Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Superintendent. I want to also welcome Kyle to our midst. Deputy Director, Superintendent, I thought you had better judgment than hiring a school social worker for that job. I'm only saying that as a school social worker myself. I'm looking at, and these are things we shouldn't be able to do, is read charts like this, right? But looking at attachment B, on category 2, you have Muskegon Area ISD and Muskegon Heights Public School Academy. I see a lot of empty spots there, and I wonder if you can speak to that.
Yeah.
As I understand, Muskegon Heights Public School Academy was listed as a district that was projected to eliminate their deficit, about this time, June 30th. The quarterly report lists them as projected to end the year with a reduced deficit. But do I understand right that their management company quit because they couldn't make a profit, couldn't make ends meet? And what do we do? What do we anticipate, and how do we deal with those things?
We're at this point in time, we've actually had to work with the Mosaica, the management company. Now that they're leaving, they've pretty much told us they're not going to do the deficit elimination plan or the follow-up on that we should wait for the new management company and deal with them. We've sort of acquiesced on that in regards to
Wait, did I hear you say they said they're not going to do it? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure. And they can do that?
Well, they're not. No, they shouldn't do that. But the reality of the situation is that they're out the door here in a couple of weeks, and so our hands are somewhat tied in that regard.
Right. I mean, if you want to think about it this way, the consequences or punishment wouldn't be towards them. It would be towards the kids, and they're leaving anyway. So we're trying to accommodate this in a transition way so that whoever comes in then can get back on track.
Well, I understand that. It's just they were hired to do a job. They couldn't complete the job that they was set out in a was it not clearly defined to them what that role was? And does the state have any recourse in that when a company says we don't fulfill our obligation? Those are just concerns, and should we be looking at something to deal with that sort of thing down the road?
Yes.
I should clarify too, though, that the deficit in that district was in the capital project fund. In order for them to, because they were the changeover, they were actually in a building from Muskegon Heights, but because they were changing the entity who was operating from the school district to the academy, in order to meet the building code, they actually had to make infrastructure changes. And so the deficit was that they weren't able to get the loan to accommodate that. And that was the actual basis of their deficit elimination plan, was that they would get a capital project loan. The new entity is now going to have to do that. So it's kind of all revolved around that situation and the timing of that loan. When they get that loan, they would then be out of deficit.
I would say, though, Representative, that the spirit behind your question, in addition to what Dan answered, that the concrete answer, but I mean, I think that's why, in the long run, we want local boards to make these decisions, own these decisions. They're there in the long run. It's their community. They want the best for their kids. So these are always, I'm not saying there's not a place for that and a role for that, especially if the local district isn't stepping up. But it's always one of the potential consequences is boards and community members aren't going to walk away. Other people can.
And I want to clarify, I mean, I don't want to see anything that hurts these kids. They deserve, they need the best education possible, especially, if they've had issues, as I understand they have. But I want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence on this end so we don't get into those situations where somebody just says, oh, we're pulling out. And I don't want to make it sound like they've just done it on a whim, but still that holds some real consequences for the community, I think.
Next is Representative Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to follow up a little bit. I had probably two questions because I want to follow up a little bit on what Representative Brown said, and I think maybe it's a more philosophical question, but I think what he's getting at is this is an endemic problem with having a for-profit management company come in and deal with the deficit district. Are we looking at making sure that this doesn't happen again? Because the incentive is not necessarily for them to fulfill their obligations through a deficit elimination plan. It's to make a profit. And that's, I mean, whether good or bad, that is their motive. And if they don't make a profit, they can walk away, as you indicated, with impunity. Are we doing anything to make sure that we don't hire a similar company or the board doesn't bring in the same thing? Because I would assume if we've made a mistake once, we could make it again, and then I'll have a follow-up.
Yeah, no, I think these are good questions. I mean, let's face it, the whole system of education is evolving dramatically. I mean, at the one extreme, it's because technology is ahead of us. I mean, I've got 4 preschool grandkids, and what they're doing is unbelievable to what my kids did even just a generation ago at that age. So that's one end of the extreme. The other end is this whole organizational structure that does it still make sense? I mean, we've had discussions here at times. I promised kind of I wouldn't go too far with anything today, but we have talked about consolidation and all the rest of those things that are structural. But I do think that whole question of where the for-profits fit, I mean, there's always been a role in the sense that local districts always buy things from for-profit companies. You buy textbooks, you buy food. So, I mean, it's not like this is new. And when a board makes a decision to use a for-profit management company, it's their right. I do think that when they're in this kind of situation, though, you're raising a good point that we should be thoughtful. We don't have any direct authority as a department, but we should be thoughtful as you're looking at new, evolving laws like you're doing on the FIT team, the financial, team. I think we come across things that when I was a superintendent 20 years ago, I never would have dreamed was going to be part of the future. Mostly good, some not so good. And so I do think it's worth attending to and thinking about. But I would, in perspective, as I said, it's not as if we haven't, as a system of schools, used private enterprise from the very beginning. But when you turn a whole system over, I think that does deserve further dialogue.
And then, I don't know if this was on here, I was looking for, what is the status of the Bay City Academy? Are they, I know they're in, the authorizer, not the authorizer, Mr. Ingersoll, is under federal indictment, I believe, for financial improprieties. Are they in deficit? I know there's been some accusations of money missing. Are they on this list?
They're not on this list, to my knowledge, and I know that situation has been turned over to the Attorney General. There's been. Are they operating in deficit at this point, or what's the financial status, apart from the legal concerns? Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you if they're operating in a deficit this year. We won't know that till we get their financial report for the year ending June 30, 2014.
So prior to all this stuff coming to light, they were not in deficit, is that, so we won't know until afterwards? Okay,
I'll
thank you.
double check on that, but I'm reasonably certain that's the case.
All right, thanks. If you could, that'd be great.